And I do believe we are recording.
All right, we'll give it 5 seconds and I'll launch into the intro. Hey everybody, welcome to the inaugural video for the Grail online meetup group in Philadelphia. I'm Bill Rowland and I am joined tonight by Jon Lister, who's with Elite SEM, and tonight we have a great video to present to you. We're going to be talking a little bit about Google quality rater guidelines in a mobile first world. Jon, what are we going to be talking about tonight? I think it's kind of like, what are Google quality rater guidelines, and essentially why do they matter to us? Is that more or less it?
Yeah, that's more or less it. I mean, the quality rater guidelines it's a 160-page document that Google publishes every year for employees. It's for the actual quality raters, the humans that show up to websites and provide feedback to Google. The document was never publicly available until about 2015 when someone leaked it. And then Google just decided to keep publishing it every year, I guess, out of transparency.
Sure.
So what it can do for us is it gives us a kind of an inside view and pretty straight answers from the search engine on what they consider authoritative, what they consider expert kind of level content, and what their criteria are to sort of determine, hey, is this really low content or is this the highest quality possible?
Right. So I mean, ultimately, how is your average, online business or let's say a person that basically works on content or develop or works on websites from an SEO standpoint, something like that, how can they actually use this information?
Yeah, good question. So they're going to be able to use this in the presentation because Google actually gives us examples. We're going to see some examples of what highest quality and high quality looks like, what the elements are of each of those sort of designations, and how you can kind of tailor your content, how your brand interacts with your own customers, your own sort of brand cheerleaders, and how your store sort of acquires reputation online and how that can influence how Google sort of perceives your authority overall.
Great. Awesome. Well, first of all, why don't we go through a couple of basic intros?
Sure.
And then we'll jump right on into it. So you first.
Sure. So my title is a strategist at Elite SEM. I've been in SEO, I think, from about 2009, give or take. Began as kind of a working writer, and then moved into this space, mostly focused these days on enterprise level e-commerce, things that have hundreds of thousands of URLs in the index, larger domains that have a kind of more pressing kind of technical needs, that sort of thing. Sure. But I couldn't imagine being in a different field. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm right there. I'm right there with you. And for anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Bill Rowland. I'm actually a co-organizer with Jon for the Philadelphia Grail online marketing meetup. I'm currently an SEO director at Trinity Insight in Philadelphia, where we also work on e-commerce sites, pretty much of all sizes and shapes. And we also get the opportunity to kind of get our hands a little bit dirty in a variety of different areas, only one of which is content development and, how to make sure that, our clients receive the best high quality content that's going to help them perform as highly as possible. So with that, why don't we kind of get into the meat of the presentation?
Yeah. So to begin with, I would be remiss if I didn't include a couple of slides that we did. We did this presentation live. So for everyone who's getting the recording of this, I kept all the slides for live just because you have to. Who am I? These are just pics of the dog, man. Just pics of the dog.
Whalen.
Yeah. It's my 90-pound permanent child.
Yep. We all have to have a couple fur babies around.
You have to. This is who I am. This is basically my full-time job. What I do. I don't.
Whalen's babysitter. Yeah.
Right. And what do I do? So SEO, we're like kind of part website mechanic. We are not web developers ourselves. Usually we speak web developer, and that is sort of it's a key skill set. You have to be able to interface with a web development team. You have to be able to speak their language, and you have to be able to understand their needs and what the goal that they're trying to get to, because you want to align and you want to be like, I'm never there to make, and I'm sure you had this experience as well. You're never there to make a web dev look anything other than like a rock star in the room for solving a bunch of problems. And
Exactly.
we're a bit of a search engine optimists, plural. I think in SEO generally, there's never a career-ending injury. I never usually run up on a site that's like, well, it's all done, pack it up, right? Let's start over. It's there are always ways to improve what you find. Even with some people who kind of show up and it's like, help me, and they have like a kind of a history of bad behavior. You can generally do what you can to fix it, and amend your ways and kind of produce stuff going forward. So I never try to paint as a completely grim picture for the site owners out there. But again, I mentioned enterprise SEO strategy focused on e-commerce. I work on and have experience with all of these specific e-commerce platforms. In fact, about 40% of Elite's clients are e-commerce websites, from everything from Magento to WebSphere to Hybris and Demandware. Demandware itself is just sort of gobbling up more of the e-commerce space. So, right? The presentation itself kind of came out of this survey. This was done by Clutch and published by Search Engine Land, where basically like our channel was the most boring. And 44% of businesses said SEO was not part of their digital strategy, which I was kind of amazed by, especially given what their goals were. One, they want to increase revenue, and two, they want to have more brand awareness. Those are their goals: revenue, brand awareness. So what do you want? You want more, transactions and money in the door, and you want more people to know about your brand and be able to recall it enough to find it online, right?
Right.
So then I looked at what were their priorities, and the priorities from this survey, which shocked me. Social media, the website, a mobile app, content marketing. These are all things that have SEO implications with them. And what's really, I think the most important kind of takeaway from this particular slide in general is, if you have a website, if you've allowed a search engine to crawl your website, you're engaged in SEO. The search engine is in contact with your site. It's rating it. It's understanding its engagement signals. It's devouring its content. It's getting a look at how fast the site loads. You're engaged in SEO. If you're not optimizing it, you're just allowing the competition to beat you.
Well, I mean, John, don't you really think that, first of all, you're absolutely right, and I agree 100%. I mean, I think the problem being is that a lot of times people just plain don't understand SEO and all the different ways in which it can help and promote, not only, driving a greater quantity of traffic that's, more highly qualified, but also how can it help, areas such as social media or, mobile apps and so on and so forth. I mean, clearly there's just, people just look at it as essentially a one-trick pony when it really isn't that way at all.
No, not. And granted, it's not a SEO is never sort of a one-to-one, put money in, get money out, game. You have to be able to commit time to it. It isn't sexy. It does take web development involvement. It takes effort and a real dedicated plan, and a good team behind you to really execute on it. You have to have a bunch of stakeholders opted in to really achieve success.
Right. I mean, from a planning standpoint and also from an executional one, I mean, when you look at it, you have to, you have to put some work behind it. But what I would say to most people is that, generally speaking, SEO is among one of the most cost-effective channels that you can pursue. The problem being is that, arguably, it is not as easy to track, ROI versus, let's say, a channel like paid search or something like that. But the point being that in the long run, you're going to be much better off for it. So obviously I'm biased.
No, but totally agree. I think same page. Because then it proposed to me like, okay, so all these things can impact SEO. All of these things can influence organic, influence rankings, influence traffic, influence, ultimately revenue. So how do I use the recently published, which were at the time about August 2018, the new quality guidelines? How do I use them? And I focused on the quality guidelines because they are, like we mentioned at the top, straight answers from Google. And you do as well as I do on the organic side. Like, we don't get straight anything.
No.
We don't get reps. We don't get, they won't talk to us. So to have this kind of stuff available, I think everybody should be like really paying attention to it, especially the designation for highest quality pages. So this is the tippy top of Google's ratings for the very lowest quality to the highest quality. And the first thing you notice here is, and I'm going to use this one a lot, is EAT. EAT. Expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. These three kind of triumvirate components work together to help Google understand, is this a site that people should take truthful information from? Is it a site that we should serve to people routinely? And is it a site that ultimately is going to have a really great reputation in the space and make our search engine look better? Because Google doesn't want people coming back to SERP. They don't want people using their search engine and finding like low quality stuff and then trying to go elsewhere. Google has a monetary investment in making sure that people get the best result.
Absolutely.
So a couple components here: very high level of expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And we'll get into that. A satisfying level of MC, which is main content, and a very positive reputation. You got to have a great content. You have to have a great reputation, and you have to be an authority in your space. So how do you get there, right? And what can you do to arrive there, and how do you know if you necessarily are there now? So what's a very high level of EAT? Expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Your mileage may vary. So the formal expertise that's required for, say, a medical and a financial, or like dispensing legal advice, isn't necessarily the EAT signals that you need to send to Google if you're a chef, or if you're, say, like a BuzzFeed. Who is an expert depends on the source material and the provider of that. But I think in general, when you know. If you are a medical journal and you're producing content not by a medical professional, that's not terribly authoritative. At least I don't think so. I wouldn't use it. Would you?
Not at all. But I do have a question. So this is basically where the whole concept of your money or your life comes in, isn't that correct?
Yes. Yep, it does. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But to touch on that is, Google has a YMYL standard. It's called Your Money or Your Life. If you are engaged in content that can impact somebody's finances or kind of their general well-being, you have the highest quality standard applied to your site. And we'll get into kind of more broader ranges of how that applies across content. But in general, if you're trying to dispense advice and it can affect basically a person in any financial or health sort of way, you're going to have a pretty high bar, and you shouldn't be shooting from the hip with your content, like, at all.
Right. So once again, what it comes down to is that there's just a higher standard for, let's say, a site that might be dealing to, financial advice, but the standard might be significantly lower for, a site that dispenses recipes.
Sure, exactly. But then if you think about that expertise, authority, and trustworthiness for like a recipe site, like, it wouldn't be just some guy off the street kind of talking about how to make something. It would be, well, what's your formal background in this? Are you a chef? Are you, a very well-known home cook? Right? Do you have some sort of presence in this space? Do you have an established kind of real or credentials that would lend you for people to kind of take your word for it, basically?
Right on.
Yeah. So satisfactory amount of main content. What satisfactory? And fortunately, these are examples. This is direct from Google. This page in and of itself, this KitchenAid Ultra Power 4.5 quart stand mixer, that is direct from the Quality Rater guidelines. This is what makes them pretty interesting. Is you want an example? Click, and you have one. Manufacturer's product specifications. Google calls this out specifically as part of a main content for like your PDP, your product kind of content for an e-commerce site. They also call out the reviews, and that it looks a little suspicious that there's 94 of them and they're all 5 stars. Wonder how that happened. But they do call it out that reputation is sort of an important component of this, and of determining highest quality. So if people are rating this highly like this, they're going to take that into account. The other thing that they note is that the notion of tabbed content, which you can see in the red box kind of at the bottom there.
Sure.
It's considered main content now. before, like several years ago, in like a desktop first world, the tabbed content was kind of a no-no. They said, well, tabs, Google will ignore the tabs. They
Right.
won't ignore them anymore. Why? Well, because we're mobile first now. And for those of you who don't know, mobile first, as of late August, I think the majority of e-commerce sites were like finished kind of getting onto the mobile first index, but every ranking signal that used to come from the desktop version of your site now comes from the mobile version. So Google decided to kind of go with the site version where the majority of their traffic is coming from. So they figured, well, if you're on the desktop site less and you're on the mobile site more, that's where the ranking signal should come from.
Yep, makes a lot of sense, especially, that's where all the growth happens to be, whether it be in advertising or anything else in search overall. So, I mean, why not make that shift?
100%. So you're satisfactory amount of main content. So, and we talked a little bit about this during the live presentation. Well, the manufacturer's product descriptions are duplicate across everywhere. 100% agree. Having those item details, boilerplate on there, it may not help you rank higher, lower, but it'll definitely help you level set with the other competition in the space, because they'll have that as well, and then you can begin to differentiate out from that main content, because you can see you have item specifications, which is a little bit different than item details. That's a little more proprietary probably to this specific site. Then you have guest reviews, which are unique to this site, and then you have the shipping and returns, obviously unique to this site. So it's everything that the searcher needs to make an informed decision to purchase and to answer their questions. That's really
right. And they don't even have to they really don't have to navigate even off the page. So I mean, once again, they're pouring through the content. They're basically exhibiting behavior on that page that would indicate that it is quality. They're looking at reviews. They're making all these selections, and ultimately Google can kind of detect that and imply or believe that it's of quality.
Exactly. No, you're 100% right. The customer service experience, this is kind of another component. When we saw that shipping and returns tab, it's vital. Who is responsible for the site in general? Who's responsible for it? Who maintains it? And where does customer service come in? Is vital. It's part and parcel. You can't have a YMYL website with a high degree of trust that doesn't have clearly articulated customer service information and a really great space that communicates who's responsible for the site. You can't be hiding the ball.
So what you're really talking about is like customer contact information, the number, obviously it'd be great if it was in structured markup, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Address like what you have here.
Exactly.
On and on.
This is, yep. And this is kind of the gold standard here, at least for me. This is LL Beans. Shout out LL Bean. Where on the left here you have, outstanding service direct from Maine. They tell you where your call is going to. All right. And that sets the expectation for the searcher, for the human on there. Oh, okay. So if I'm in the United States, I'm going to speak to somebody in the United States. And I can dial from right there. If I'm doing it from my computer, I can click. That'll do that for me right there. I can chat if I want to chat. I've got the email option. And then I have a whole host of information around here, from track my order to, what's about free shipping, additional shipping information. It's not hiding the ball for the searcher, the consumer. It's giving them as much information as possible to feel as comfortable as possible with making that decision to purchase.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are risks, man. There are risks to having a poor customer service experience in offline sales as well as online. Your offline sales can murder your online experience because people will not be shy about their opinion. This came out, I think, three or 4 weeks ago. If anybody else reads the patent tea leaves from Google, the algorithm, at least the way that they want to apply it, they really don't consider the reviews that are on your site terribly trustworthy. Shocked, I know, because you could have 93 reviews and they're all 5 stars and it looks suspiciously curated, right?
Yep.
So Google can now look to third-party domains and what customers and humans are saying about you, third-party, and take that into account when constructing the entity of your brand and its reputation. as it applies to expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. We think this dovetails off of the Medic update, which happened in August, where you saw fields that are more YM/YL focused. Why it's called the Medic update. It's medical sites kind of got hit the hardest, but you saw shifts where medically peer-reviewed journals, medically reviewed content kind of worked higher, and stuff that was just people who didn't have that kind of degreed sort of background. They sort of lost. They lost a bit of coverage of SERP space.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. Hey, just a quick question. So, could you speak a little bit to like essentially the entity of your brand or an entity in general? And
Sure.
once again, you kind of mentioned how more or less Google is kind of collecting clues, for lack of a better term, about what your entity or what perhaps even an individual is known for, and essentially applying that to how they interpret or look at your content.
Yeah, it's so it's a long word, the disambiguation, which basically like how I tell a bat that is an animal from a bat that's a baseball bat, how I tell an orange the color from the orange, the fruit, how I disambiguate the query. And for people, that's how I tell like how Bill Rowland is differentiated, is based on what his credentials are online, what other sites are talking about him. Is there semantic markup at play that a search engine can kind of gobble up and understand, take that schema that helps a search engine understand content better and say, okay, works here, got it. This experience, same as markup. Oh, it's the same Bill Rowland as this LinkedIn, as this verified Twitter, as this Facebook, what have you.
Right.
Okay, then you start to make associations, literally the web, between a web of associations that build an entity for any given query, any given person, any given brand.
Great. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. This slide in particular, this is a former client who shall remain nameless, but very disappointed and truly sad. This person had a negative experience, and you can see a bunch of other people did as well. And the review isn't kind. When people are upset, they tend to give much more information than somebody who's really happy. If somebody was really happy, it would just be a 5-star review, and it would just say "awesome!" ! And you wouldn't get much context.
Yeah.
The problem with this offline experience is kind of mirrored online, because this is the same sites, the same brands, customer service, contact us. Completely different from LL Bean. You know as well as if you've done any CRO, any conversion rate optimization, if you have that many fields, they're not gonna do that. You're not even gonna think to fill all that out. There's too much friction associated with those fields. It's silently saying wordlessly that, hey, we don't want to hear from you.
Right. Jump through all these hurdles, and then we might respond.
It may be, but we don't know where that's going to go. And if it's going to go to a human or it's going to go to an automated inbox, you're mad and you just want to get in touch with a person, and you're confronted with a bunch of fields. Sure, you have an 800 number up at the top, an 844 number, but it's not the first thing the customer notices. They're confronted with this huge amount of white space and all of these blank fields that they have to fill out. Your eye isn't drawn to that first. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to really understand and get right that there really are no lines. There's no offline. There's no online. It's just the world now. All right. The customer doesn't see any of that. They just see screens.
Well, one thing, I totally agree. One thing that I'd kind of point out, and when you were doing the first presentation live, and I was thinking about it, I'm like, if I didn't know any better, I'd just be like petrified, and I'd put myself in a closet and suck my thumb, and be afraid essentially to do anything and to put yourself out there. And I think that it's really important for people to understand, like, the point what we're really talking about here, and that I think you're trying to get across, is that, look, sure, there's, there will always be some upset customers,
right,
and things just don't always work correctly or right or the way that you want them to. But, if you adopt, solid policies that help consumers, they give them content that they're looking for, that, give you that eat factor, in the long run, you're going to be fine. So don't, I guess what my advice would be is, like, don't feel overwhelmed. you can do it, and we can do it, and our clients can do it as well.
Sure, absolutely. There's not going to be, if you make a misstep, there's not going to be an army of pitchforks and torches, outside the gates, waiting for you. It's if you have a procedure in place with your customer service, if you've paid attention to the logistics behind that experience, that your
Yep.
phone number connects to a human who has a vested interest in solving that problem for that person who's thought to buy from you. Because anytime they're contacting customer service, they're giving you an opportunity, and they're
Yep.
giving you an opportunity to solve a problem. That's all we do at the end of the day. I just want to solve problems.
Yep.
That's it.
Absolutely.
That's it. So examples. Let's look at examples. The YMYL is going to come into play here too, but this is Google's example of a highest quality, what they call shopping, which is e-commerce. You'll see a very high level of EAT. You'll see a very positive reputation, and you will see a satisfying or comprehensive amount of high quality main content. So who's our guy here? Well, we'll get to that in a second, because we're going to talk about that YMYL, because you saw it underneath. Let's go back 1 second. You might have missed it. Right here in the red here, the backpack shopping page that we're going to take a look at has a YMYL applied to it. Well, why? It's not financial information. It's definitely not medical advice. It's just a backpack. So why is that? It's because you sell stuff. Any e-commerce website, anybody who sells anything online has the YMYL content standard applied. So you have to have the very highest quality. You have to maintain that content. We don't want old pages trying to sell products. We don't want unsecure pages trying to sell products. We have to have a secure connection. In fact, if you're an e-commerce site that doesn't have an HTTPS connection right now, you're probably getting the not secure in your browser bar. You need an HTTPS migration, like stat, quick. Provide accurate product information. You can't overpromise. You can't dive too deeply into marketing speak. Don't let the merchandising team kind of get a hold of your content and kind of make it right. Make it something that's a little like hype machine oriented. You need to communicate to the searcher, hey, your product does this. It has these specifications. And we think it works great in these given applications, right? This is how you can use our stuff. Those are all signals of very high EAT. So one more thing before we get to it. I'll stop hiding the ball in a second. Speaking about reputation, you saw the previous, those negative reviews. Some were positive. It was kind of mixed in there. For a YMYL website, if you have a mixed reputation, it is caused for a low rating. So you have to invest in those customer service areas. You have to pay attention to your consumers, the searchers, the humans that are trying to cheerlead for your brand. You got to pay attention. You got to meet them where they are in the social spaces, meet them on the phone when they call you. Really drive home that you want to work with these people, and you're here to satisfy them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Moment of truth. So this is LL Bean again. Shock. This is their deluxe book pack page. This is what Google calls out as the highest quality for shopping. Why? So the site owns the manufacturing process of this product. Nobody else makes this. This is LL Bean's proprietary product. It has the highest quality main content because it gives the manufacturer, that is also the site owner's product specifications. The site's content is easy to read. It's in bullet points. It's very digestible for a searcher. It's also located above the fold, so it's very easy to get to. I don't have to scroll. I don't have to look anywhere. I've also got over 674 reviews, it looks like, with a pretty darn positive rating. Again, so this is hitting, I've got easy to read, comprehensive product information. I control the supply chain. I am the authority on this product. It's much better to be Nike than it is to sell Nike shoes, right? Mm-hmm. And I've got a really well-reviewed product. It's not just that I make it. It's not just that I control the product specifications and I'm keenly able, uniquely positioned to talk about it. It's that it's good too, and that humans like it. It's all three of those things coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a solid page. It's definitely among the certainly the best that I've seen. So. Right,
and what's interesting here is there's a designation right underneath highest quality. It's high quality, and you see the brand sort of designation play out. We have Target here. Target has their own brands, sort of. I don't know if they make their own backpack. I don't know, but it's not here. They definitely don't make Hello Kitty. I don't think that's a Target brand.
Right.
Right. So they're selling other people's products. So Target still has a great reputation, still has a satisfying amount of main content, and some of these products are pretty well reviewed. But some of them don't have reviews, and they don't control the creation and kind of manufacturing processes around these products. They're just kind of a middleman for the product manufacturer. So that's the one sort of ding in their authority space that gives them high quality as opposed to highest quality. There's still nothing to sniff at. It's a pretty good spot to be. But if you're a Target trying to sell LL Bean book packs, you might not get as high as LL Bean selling their own product.
Yep, absolutely.
We mentioned maintenance. So maintenance is required for YMYL e-commerce pages. It's hard to change, man. E-commerce, the product team, the manufacturing guys, they get a hold of stuff. They change products out all the time. Products go out of stock and nobody tells anyone, and they just let the page sit there like this.
Mm-hmm.
Left here, this is what a couple months ago when we were putting this presentation together, I went to get a new slide for LL Bean, and this is what the page looked like. It was blank. You couldn't buy the product, and it didn't really help anyone find something different. Right.
Yep.
The product details, they were half kind of falling off the fold. It's close to disappearing off the page. And then on the right side here, the LL Bean, their backpacks page completely changed around. You can't even see the products above the fold unless you want maybe a JanSport or a kid's backpack or Cat and Jack. That's all you have. It's a very design first, aesthetic first approach. And while that might be great, I think for maybe the opinions in the room that made that decision, it might not be great with the searcher. And I'd love to know kind of how that decision came about. I feel like somebody was like, but wait, the products, and they got voted down.
Right. Yeah. So, so what would you do if you're looking at the LL Bean backpack and you basically get the sold out message? From your perspective, my thought would basically be, providing immediately below it alternatives.
Yeah.
And you still have most of the content there. It talks about the deluxe book pack and so on, and that's perfectly fine. But I guess being able to provide alternatives as opposed to just like a dead end is probably something that would be good.
Give the searcher something to do. If the product is sold out, give them an email capture. They're like, hey, the second we get this back in stock, we will email you. And now you have something that you can apply to a different channel. This is how you help synergy between channels. If they got here via organic, they click through from an organic search listing and they see that this thing is sold out, but now you have an ability to get somebody into your email marketing system. That to me is great synergy.
Yeah, I would agree.
So here you can see kind of side by side, like here's what it was. This is Google's shining example of the highest quality and what it became. Just kind of a real stark difference.
Yep.
Between the two. Conversely, Target subcategory transformation, where they had their backpacks, one, products immediately available. The filtration, the faceted navigation on the left side there, the narrow by, and then what it turns into, which is that much wider version, much more visual, much less. It's very like Pinterest board sort of style, much less killer. It's a little more filler.
Yep. Agreed.
So, fortunately, LL Bean fixed it, man. They got back, but
nice.
They fixed it. You have to stay on top of your merchandising. The humans matter. They're the most important. Google is watching engagement signals, and if you don't have something on the page that encourages a searcher to interact and convert, something you can kind of track. Because you imagine if nobody gave you their email address, do you even want to stock that product? No one's waiting for it. But if you don't have those things, Google is going to see your engagement signals. They're going to start to see it decline. You're going to start to see that back button getting pushed more often. That pogo sticking phenomenon where somebody arrives from search results, says, "Oh no, this isn't what I wanted," clicks back. It goes back to search results, and that to Google is an indication that the search wasn't successful. So why would you want to serve a landing page prominently that isn't satisfying the person using the search engine? Because what does Google want? Google wants people to keep using Google. And if you don't give them quality, if you don't give them something that's going to solve a problem, they might go somewhere else. They might try a different avenue. They just might go to Amazon next time.
Yep. We don't want that to happen.
We don't want that to happen.
Mm-mm.
Just small PSA on that, guys. That relationship is parasitic. That is not symbiotic. Can't tell you how many times, like, I get it. We want to be where the consumers are, and they are definitely there. What ends up happening is because Amazon tends to break the rules a little bit. Google needs Amazon more than Amazon needs Google. So they can start to rank for your own products and rank pretty well. And the next thing you know, Amazon's number one and you're number two. And that's an interesting place to be from a branded search perspective, where the click-through rate to the top result can be upwards of 60%.
Yep.
It's no bueno.
No bueno at all.
Next thing here, know your popular pages ahead of time. It's not your shopping cart. All right. The shopping cart's not the most popular page. It's check your analytics, check seasonally. We do really interesting things where we're able to take keyword research by season and determine spikes and ebbs in search volume, so that you can understand, like, okay, people are going to be searching for this a little bit more in this season as opposed to this other season. This is going to shift in popularity. So ahead of time, these are the things I have to have in stock, or these are the pages that have got to be optimized ahead of time. I have to be, or if I don't have those pages and I want to rank for those terms, I need those pages. I want people to play the infinite game as opposed to the finite game. And what that means is, in game theory, a finite game is a game between two teams, like football, right? You have two teams, highest score wins, you play for 4 quarters, somebody wins, game over. The infinite game is a little bit more like the Cold War, where you have a bunch of sides with a build-up over time. It's very much like business, where the goal is not to win. The goal is to keep playing. And if you try to win, you'll end up not being able to play. So many businesses focus on the finite game. We need to win this quarter. You can't win. You do better. You do better. You increase your profitability. You increase your search presence. You keep playing. That helps make long-term decisions. It helps understand the longevity of a business, and it helps you stay as one of a prominent brand in your industry.
Yep, couldn't agree more. I mean, first stay alive, then strive to succeed. But no matter, don't overlook step 1 for step 2.
Exactly. Don't mistake those outputs for outcomes, guys. Google doesn't buy your products; they don't. So ranking number 1 doesn't win you anything, and it doesn't. There's no way to sort of win organic search. There's no way to win SEO. We can broaden out, because if you decide to rank number 1 for a given keyword, and something happens to that query, or the searcher stops searching for it, which is something you really can't control. If that goes away, that search volume goes away tomorrow. Was that the only thing keeping your business kind of going? That's why we like to broaden out as humanly possible, right? We don't want all the eggs in that one basket.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Right. One last, we got to talk about mobile. It was a mobile first world, after all.
It still is. Yep.
Still, right. It was quality rater guidelines in a mobile first world. So Google crawls the web at 3G speeds, the mobile web. And they're going to do that for at least another 3 years, till at least 2020. They consider that the majority connection speed for the world. So that's what they're going to give you. Not 4G, not 4G LTE. And in truth, if you're in a crowded network space like a Manhattan, like Los Angeles, like Chicago, Houston, those central hubs of population, you're probably a lot closer to a 3G connection than you realize. Even when your phone says 4G LTE, it's not. And as a result, it already takes 15.3 seconds to fully load a mobile page on average, because we've been desktop designed first. And kind of, is it responsive? All right, fine, it's mobile friendly. We need to change the thinking here from a mobile friendly to a mobile optimized. Conversely, so if you have 15-second average load, a 1 second delay in your load time, it can impact conversions up to 20%. And from, what speed are we talking about? How 1 second from what? Well, here are our average speeds across the industries, from automotive down to travel. I think media and entertainment in the United Kingdom, I think, is among the fastest. Yeah, you have it in United Kingdom, Germany, are the fastest. But for our finance, for our retail, you're in the 8 to 9 seconds on average. And this is according to Google and mock metrics. Pretty. I don't know about you, Bill, but that's a long time.
It sucks,
right?
honestly.
That's a long time.
I recently saw a site in the automotive space, and they're fully loaded in 3 seconds.
That's incredible.
It's a super light site, but it blew my mind. I was like, man, you guys are actually doing a damn good job. So
right, you're like, well, I can't complain about this. Moving on.
Yep, exactly.
It's crazy. So I mean, what you guys have to focus on is your DOM complete. That's your document object modeling. That is the elements of your site that make it visually complete for the searcher. That is what Google cares about as well. How quickly can I see and interact with the site? Not all of your double click and your Kenshu and your other, your tags. How quickly can I interact with the website? And your Chrome browser is actually a whole lot more powerful than you realize in trying to debug some of this information. This screenshot in general, this is right from Chrome console. Checking out defer that unused CSS right down to and this is a popular one for e-commerce sites is, your off-screen images. You have those 5 megabyte guys like hanging out below the fold, and your Facebook icon is actually 2 megabytes for whatever reason.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why any of that stuff should happen and occur, and ultimately, I mean, whether you use Chrome developer tools or Google Lighthouse or something like that to kind of diagnose it, I mean, you can do it very, very easily to figure out what's actually going on a page by page basis.
Sure. Yeah. And granted, page speed is never going to be more than a moment in time. So you always want to get a few measurements to be able to see. I like baselines of like, let's take your busiest times, look at your analytics, look at your kind of interaction times and see when the most people are on your site from GA's perspective. Test there, test at 3 o'clock in the morning to get kind of a good swing one way or the other and kind of go from there.
Sure. Absolutely.
Don't make searchers pay for data. You can see in the diagnostics here again from Chrome console, the milliseconds by which it's taking JavaScript time to boot up. It's taking, you have an inefficient cache policy that's making the browser do a whole lot more work than it should. You have an excessive DOM size where the stuff that's needed to render to visual content for your site is so heavy that it's taking a whole lot of time. Searchers are paying for data. And you got to remember, they're engaging more and more with a mobile device that has a finite data plan. Don't be the reason that the searcher gets throttled, because if they're already experiencing issues because of data loss, your site's going to load slower for them anyway. So you're playing a losing game at that point.
Oh yeah, I mean, just look at that, 18 seconds. Oh, it's killing me. That's brutal.
Yeah.
And then that's like in the best possible case scenario. Think about add 50% to that.
Right. No, exactly. So for mobile in general, folks, we've got 2 to 3 seconds. That is the amount of time we have for kind of maximum interest, most optimal conversion metrics for a visual render of the page. 2 to 3 seconds. Anything after that 1 second delay after that 3rd second is a 20% loss, and 20 after each second. This particular page, they have problems. And again, Chrome console, you can check out your DOM load time and your full load time straight from Google. I throttled this down to a fast 3G connection, which is the speed at which Google would crawl the mobile web. So how fast would this page render on a 3G connection for Google? Well, it would take them 12 seconds, almost 13 seconds to render the content. It can't happen. We can't, not for, if you want a successful e-commerce page and you want something that's going to convert optimally, they're not going to wait around 13 seconds to get that content.
Yeah, absolutely. That's crazy.
It's nuts. And thank you. And that is all.
Fantastic. Well, Jon, that was really a great presentation. I think that, first and foremost, how many people out there really even would be aware of the fact that Google actually publishes the, that set of guidelines. And by the way, I mean, you and I both know that it's like 160 pages long. So,
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that it's pretty damn helpful to like be able to go through and identify instances where, hey, these are the pieces that each one of us should really be looking at and understanding, and kind of getting a feeling for how do we create quality content? How does Google decide it? And then ultimately, how to make sure that it's loading quickly, to once again please Google.
Right, right, and the first and last stop there is pleasing the human is pleasing the search engine. Google is never more than an extension of searcher behavior, really, for organic search. So if you're if you're satisfying people and they're showing up on your site and they're getting there quickly and they're finding the products that they need or the information that they need quickly, and they're getting it in a manner that is relatively friction free, Google is going to see that, and you're going to get rewarded for that.
Absolutely. Great. So everybody, once again, thanks for joining us. Once again, Jon, thank you so much for presenting the presentation that we had done at the most recent Grail Meetup.
Yep.
And otherwise, everybody, once again, the Grail Online Meetup typically occurs the third Wednesday of every month in Philadelphia. Please check out meetup.com and search for the Grail. Thanks so much. And on behalf of Jon, so long.
Thank you.